What's good, guys? So in today's video we are gonna learn how to properly use FlutterFlow in order to build apps without writing code, okay? And so FlutterFlow is a very powerful tool. You can pretty much build any kind of app out there. You just need to know how to do it correctly. And in today's video I want to show you how you can build one of the apps that I use probably the most frequently nowadays, and that is a currency crypto conversion app. Okay, and so this is going to be a very simple app where the user can add currencies, they can remove currencies, and they can also edit a specific value in any of the currencies and also cryptos, and it's automatically going to recalculate all of the values. And this is a little bit complex to make with no-code tools, as you're going to see in the video. But nevertheless, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can duplicate the functionality of one of my favorite and one of the most used apps on my phone right now. And so in the app, we're going to have just one page. Okay, and so this is the UI, just a single page. And essentially, we're showing a list of currencies that the user has decided they are interested in. Okay, you know, we're going to store a lot of currencies, but maybe the user doesn't care about particular currencies. Maybe they don't care about the Brazilian real or the Argentine peso, but maybe they do care about specific Argentine peso and maybe a Colombian peso, and they don't care about something else. So this is very important. We have a list of currencies. The user will be able to add a specific currency. They will be able to delete a specific currency. And then they will be able to change the value in any of the currencies, and it's all going to recalculate. So all the currencies are going to recalculate automatically. So if they have, let's say, $1, and they're seeing the exchange, you know, how much that $1 is, and all the currencies that they're tracking, and if they change that particular currency, let's say they put, instead of $1, they put $10, it's all going to automatically recalculate. So instead of, you know, $1 to 10 pesos or whatever, it's going to be $10 to 100 pesos. Now we're going to be storing the currencies in FirestoreDB, and so we're going to have the currency code, so something like USD for dollar or EUR for euro. We're going to have the value, okay, the value of that currency as compared to the base currency. The base currency is always going to be dollar in this example. Okay, so we're going to have $1, and then all the values are going to be compared to that $1. Okay, and next we're going to have a field called show, and this is going to determine whether the user is interested in that particular currency or not. So we might have, you know, 100 currencies here, and maybe only 5 of them have the show flag set, meaning that they're only interested in these 5 specific currencies, this particular user. Another thing that's very important is we're gonna be storing something called the factor in local storage. Okay, this is a very important thing, and I'm gonna explain to you exactly what it does as we are building the app. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go and find a currency conversion, right? We need to get a bunch of currency values for our base currency, which is going to be dollar in this example. So we can head to this site right here, exchangerate.host, and we can simply get a bunch of currencies. So they have 174x currencies, 6,000 cryptocurrencies, etc. So if we just simply go to a curl, this example right here, and we execute this request, latest, we're going to have all the currencies right here, right? So this is kind of what it uses. I'm going to use an app called Paw that enables me to see it in a much better format. So if I enter it here in this app, I'm essentially getting back the same results, but it looks better, right? In this example, it's kind of hard to read, but in this example, you kind of see what's going on, okay? So if we scroll down, if we go all the way to USD, you see that USD is 1. So in this example, all the currencies are basically, they're showing the values when the dollar is 1, okay? So if you put $2, all the values are going to be multiplied by 2. If you put $10, they're going to be multiplied by 10, etc., etc. So now we have the exchange rates, okay? This is for like a couple of days earlier. Let's execute new one, so we have it for today, and we have all the values. The next thing you guys want to do is you want to create a Firebase Firestore. So I have a Firestore database. I already created it. If you don't know how to create it, you can watch one of my previous videos where I talk about how to do it. And I don't want to duplicate the process right here because I've done it in the previous videos. I just want to show you what I've created. So I have a currencies collection. I also have a users collection, but you can ignore it for now. We're not going to be using this collection. I have a currencies collection. And right here, I have 5 currencies. So I have Polish zloty here. I have Australian dollar. We need to change the value. I have a USD, show is true, value is 1. And I have a Canadian dollar, show is true, value, that we need to double check the value. And we have a euro, true value. I think this is correct. So let's double check the values real quick. So the Polish zloty, if we go back to our app and we scroll, we have PLN 4.54. So that's what we're going to use. 4.54, it's a number. Let's double check Australian dollar. Let's actually add a field called show. And we're going to set it to Boolean, and we're going to say true. The user is interested. And what is the value? AUD is 1.4. So we're going to put 1.4. And next we have USD is always going to be 1 in this example. Canadian dollar, 2.5. I don't think that's right. CAD is 1.27. So $1 buys you 1.27 of Canadian dollar. We're also true, which means that the user is interested. And we have the euro, true 0.98. Let's find the euro here. EUR 0.97. Let's put 0.97 here. Okay. So the idea is you can have many currencies. You can have a ton of currencies here, and only some are the user is interested in. So if they add a currency, we're going to set this flag to true. If they delete the currencies, we're going to set this flag to false. But we're still storing these currencies. And that way we can update the current exchange rate. It makes it a lot easier. We're still storing all the currencies, but we're only setting the flags to the ones that we're interested in. So that way the user can view it without automatically getting it and sending those requests. So this is a very nice kind of way of doing it, okay? So we have the simple collection of currencies. We have 5 currencies here that the user is interested in. This is enough. This is all we need to do on the back end when it comes to Cloud Firestore here. The next thing we need to do is we're going to go out and build the actual app. So I'm going to sign in into my FlutterFlow account. I'm going to create a new app. We're going to call it currency app. We're going to say create new. And we are going to be using a Firebase. We're going to say set a Firebase, next step, project ID. So I'm going to enter my project ID here. I'm going to say connect. I'm going to say auto-generate config files. Okay, it generated the config files. We're not going to be using authentication. We're not going to create a user collection. And we're just going to say start building. Okay, so now we are here in FlutterFlow. Now we can build the main page from scratch. That is always an option. But it's a lot easier to see what's already been done for us. And so we can take a look at some of the templates. So we can simply go to add page. We can go to lists and try to find something that resembles numbers, right? So if we scroll around, we're going to see this transaction list. And that's very similar to kind of what we want to do because we're going to be displaying numbers, the currencies, etc., etc. So I'm going to say use my theme here. I'm going to call this homepage 2. I'm going to say use my theme. And now we have 2 pages. I'm going to remove this original page here, and I'm going to rename this page to homepage. Okay, so now we have what seems to be our homepage. Let's change the stuff here. Let's call it currencies. And let's delete this one here. We don't need this container. Here it says recent transactions. Let's rename that to currencies as well, or latest exchange rates, something like this. And now if you go to the widget tree, we see that this is a list of containers. Now, we don't need all of these containers. We just need one because we're going to wrap it inside a list view. So we're going to delete the other containers here. Okay, we have one container here, okay? And this is something we're going to wrap inside a list view. So we already have a list view. We have a container. What we need to do is we need to make sure this list view is pulling data from the currencies, okay? Now, before we can actually pull the data and show it here, we need to configure the schema inside FlutterFlow. And for that, you can come in here to Firestore, and you can create the collection to mirror what we have in our backend, in our Firestore DB. So we're going to say currencies, And if we come here to kind of quickly double check, we see that we have three fields. We have code, which is a string, show is a boolean, and value is a number. Okay, so if we come in here, we can quickly add them. We're going to say show is a boolean, true or false. We have code is a string, the currency code. We have the value that, the currency value is going to be a double, okay? Meaning it's going to have a decimal. So not like 4 or 5, but maybe 4.5, 4, 5.61, etc. So we're going to do that, okay? So now it mirrors the collection we already have. We can also go into settings here and say validate and see if it validates correctly. All right, it says successful. And now we can actually use the schema. We can utilize what we have in the backend in our app. So let's go back to the app here. We're in the list view. We can simply go to the right-hand side, go to the database and say query type. We want to do a query collection. The collection is going to be currencies. We're going to be doing list of documents, and we want to filter. Remember, we don't want to show all the currencies. We want to filter where show is true. So we're going to say filter, collection field name is show, relation is going to be equal to, value is going to be true. That way we're only showing the currencies that the user is interested in, okay? We can say confirm, and now we're actually going to be getting the currencies. So let's go ahead and display them to the user so that we can double check if everything is correct here, okay? So this is going to be the value. We're going to say set from variable, currencies document is going to be value. And here we can format it, right? So we can say number format, we can say decimal, we can also do a custom format. So let's do a decimal type, automatic, and we can display it as currency, but we don't want to display it as currency because we're going to have different currencies. So it's not going to be just one currency like dollars. It's going to be a bunch of other currencies. So we're going to say confirm. And now it's going to display it as a double, as a number. Over here, we can display the actual type of the code of the currency. So we're going to come in here, currencies, code, and now it's going to say USD. We don't really need this here. We can delete it. And that way we have the code and we have the value here. Okay, we can also display a flag if we want to get fancy. That is also very, very easy to do. So we have code. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, we have this code. Let's make it 18. Okay, and this value is also 18. Okay, that's fine. All right, so now let's run the app and make sure it's displaying the currencies correctly, because that's like the first step. Okay, so we're going to come in here. We're going to set up a test environment. We're going to create a test instance here. All right, so here's the app. And as you can see, we're showing all the currencies. We have Polish zloty, we have Australian dollar, USD, etc., etc. Now, if I go into my database and I change one of these currencies from show to true to show to false, it's not going to show up here. So if you come in here, and let's say we don't want to show the Polish zloty, we're going to say false. And now if we go back to our app, we don't see Polish zloty. And if we go back and we say true, now we see it right back. So that is the behavior that will enable us to add or delete currencies, okay? So now it's all showing up perfectly. That means we're getting the data correctly. Everything is fine. Now let's work on actually editing it, right? Because this is kind of useless. I mean, this is still useful, right? The user can see what the dollar buys them in different currencies. But we want it to be interactive, meaning that we want it to click and we want to modify, let's say they're looking for 10 Australian dollars and they want to see all the currencies, in 10 Australian dollars. And that is kind of what we need to do right now. Now, there are different ways of kind of looking at it. There are different ways of building this. But if you think about it, it all comes down to a multiplication factor, okay? So if I say, instead of 1 USD, 10 USD, I'm essentially multiplying everything by 10. Or if I say instead of 1.4 AUD, 14 AUD, I'm multiplying everything by 10. Or if I say instead of 1 USD, 5 USD, I'm multiplying everything by 5. So all in all, we have a multiplication factor at play. And it's the same thing when we decrease the value. So instead of $1, I want 50 cents, I'm dividing everything by 2. Or instead of $1, I want 10 cents, I'm dividing everything by 10. And it's the same thing when it comes to all of these currencies. At the end of the day, the main thing here, the crux of the app, is we have a factor. We have a multiplication factor, and it also will increase or decrease. So, I can multiply by 0.1, it's gonna decrease the value. I can multiply by 10, it's gonna increase the value. So if it's greater than 1, it's gonna increase the values. If I multiply by less than 1, it's gonna decrease the value. So there's a factor at play. And what that means is that we need to store a factor value that the user is automatically going to be working, and we're going to recalculate this factor whenever the user changes the values, and we're going to multiply all the other currencies by this specific factor. So if we come to the left-hand side, we have local state. We need to add a local state variable called factor. And this is also going to be a double, because it might not be exactly an integer. It could be a decimal value. And we're also going to make sure this is set as persistent. And this is going to ensure that this factor and all the values that the user is working with are going to persist between loads of the app. So if they put $100 and they see all the values that are equal to $100 in $100 terms, and they exit the app and then they reload the app, they get back to the app, they're going to see those values again. They're not going to start from the base values of $1, okay? So we're going to say create. And now we have this factor. By default, this factor is going to be 1. We're going to default it to 1, okay? Meaning that nothing is going to change. Meaning that when they see this app, it's going to appear like this. But as they're working with the app, as they're modifying the values, they're going to be automatically changing the factor. We're going to be recalculating the factor so that we can display the proper values. Okay, this is very, very important to understand. And so now that we have the factor here, the first thing we need to do is we need to display these values with the factor involved, okay? Because if they change the value, if the user puts, $2, then the factor is 2, and we need to recalculate all of them. We need to store the factor, okay? So the first change we're going to be making to this app is to make sure that we're not just displaying the value, but we're displaying it multiplied by the factor. And so we're going to go back to the app. We're going to come in here. And what we need to do is we need to multiply the value that we have stored in our Firestore DB by the factor. Okay. And so you're going to come in here and you're going to go set from variable. But we're not going to set the value directly. Okay. We're going to come in here. We're going to edit. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a very, very small custom function. Very, very simple custom function, okay? We're going to say create a new function, and we're going to call this return with factor, meaning that, take the factor into account. We're going to be returning a double, okay? And we're going to have 2 arguments. The first argument is going to be the value. So this is going to be value here. This is going to be a double. And the second argument is going to be the factor, okay? So if the factor is 2, this function is going to multiply 2 by the value. If the factor is 3, it's going to multiply 3 by the value, okay? Factor is also a double, okay? You also want to set up nullable to false. Set it to false everywhere. isList is false as well. Next, we're going to go into code, and we're going to write this simple function. All you need to do is type the following. That's it. That's all you need to do, okay? Now you're going to hit save. And your function is complete. And now, instead of returning the value, we need to make sure it takes the factor into account. If I edit this field here, I set from variable, we're not going to set the value. We're going to edit it, and we're going to come in here, and we're going to go to custom functions, and we're going to go to return with factor, that function we just wrote, and we're going to set the value. So we're passing the function two values, value, and then the factor. So the value is the value of this, the value stored in the database. So we're going to say from variable, and we're going to go to currencies and pick value. And then factor is the factor that's stored in local storage. So factor from variable, we're going to go to local state, factor. Okay. And then you can have number formatting. We can do decimal type, automatic, displays currency. We're not going to set it. We're going to hit confirm. Now remember, the factor is 1 right now. So if you run the app, we're going to be showing the same values by default. Okay, so it's also telling us we need to check for error. So if we come to this page, it's going to check if that function, if that very, very minor function is correct. Okay, so it's running right now, and there are no errors here. Okay, so if we rerun the app right here, we should see the same values there. Okay, so let's see if that works. You always want to be testing. All right, so here's the app. And as you can see, the values are all the same because the factor is 1, okay? Now, if I go back to the app, I come in here, and I say factor is 2, meaning that the user for some reason decided to look at $2 or multiplied by 2 some of the other currencies, we are going to see everything multiplied by 2. So if I change factor to 2 and I rerun the app, we should see the double of each of the values. All right, so now we loaded the app, and this is with factor 2, and everything is doubled. So if the user for some reason clicks on USD, they enter 2, this is what they're going to see, because the app is automatically going to recalculate the factor. Everything is going to be doubled. So this is working fine. Our first little function that takes the factor into account is working fine. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want the user to click on the container and have a little pop-up dialog box pop-up where they can enter a new value that they're working with. Okay, so if they want to see how much is $10 is worth in all the other currencies, they're going to have a little dialog box where they can enter the value. And for that, we are going to be having an action. So we're going to come in here, we're going to have a container, we're going to have an action. So we're going to add an action. And the way we're going to do it is we are going to be using a bottom sheet. And so if we choose a bottom sheet here, show, we need a component, okay? We need something to display. So we need to create a component first, okay? And the way you create a component is you can go back to the page here, you can come in here, and you can simply add another widget anywhere on the page and then create a component out of it. So we have a column. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say add. I'm going to go to templates and I'm going to take a look at something pre-built that I can use as a component. So I've seen something that I've used in some of the other apps that might be a good fit in this example. So if we scroll down, we have this create postcard. Okay, so if we click on that, this is what it looks like. And we can customize that in our needs, right? It has an input here, it has a button here. There's an image as well. We don't really need the image, so we can delete the image. And we can delete this row of buttons. So we don't need this row as well. And then we can center this row where the button is. So I'm going to click on the row and I'm going to come in here and we're going to center it right here. So it's nicely centered. And this write something is obviously, we can change it, right? So it says write something, enter value, enter new value. Okay. And we have this text field here. Let's call it new value. Okay, we're going to have the old value, right? The old value, whatever the user had. Maybe it's $1. Now they want to see in $15. So the 15 is going to be new value. $1 is going to be the old value. Okay. So now if we come in here, we have this post create. We can convert that into a component. Okay. Actually, let's change this post to, I don't know, submit, something like this. We're going to come to this post create. We're going to right click and we're going to say convert to component. I'm just going to call it component 1. Okay, I know, original, right? And now we created a new component, okay? And so now that we have the component, we need to configure the logic here. And the purpose of this component is one thing, and that is to update the factor that we have stored in the local storage. That is really all it's doing. Because once we update the factor, all the other values are going to be updated automatically. So let's go into submit. Let's set an action. And we're going to scroll down. We're going to say update local state. We're going to choose factor. Update type is set value because we're setting a brand new value. And now we need to make sure that the value is updated correctly. And we don't have a variable. We don't have anything. What we need to do is we need to create that new factor. Okay, so we're going to click here and we're going to create a very, very small function to do just that. So we're going to say create new function. The return type is going to be the new factor, which is a double. And we're going to have a bunch of arguments. So the first argument is the old value, okay? Which is the value that the user saw before they click to update the value. There's the old value, and that is a double, okay? And then there's the new value, and that is what the user just entered before clicking on the button, on the submit button. That is also a double. And then we also need to take into account the old factor. Okay, we can't update just with the, using the old and the new value. We also need to take into account what the factor was previously, okay? So this is the old factor. We're going to say double. This is false. Here we're going to define the function. It's going to be called update factor. We're going to go into code. We have this thing here, And all you need to do is say return new value divided by old value multiplied by the old factor. And why is this? Well, if you have your app and let's say the user clicked on the USD and the USD was 1 and they put 2, that means we need to recalculate everything by multiplying it by 2. And so the way you get the new factor is you take the new value, divide it by the old value, and you multiply it by the old factor. So if the new value is 2, the old value is 1, that USD was 1, and the factor was 1, then you get 2. If the factor was 2, then you get 4, okay? We're going to do save. And now we have the function. We have that function. We just need to pass the value, the variables now, okay? So what is the old value? The old value is the value that we pass into this component, what the user saw before they clicked on the row. So if we go to old value, we're going to come in here from variable. Now you have to be careful here, okay? The value, the old value, it cannot be straight from the database. It needs to take into account the factor, okay? Because in the database, it's always going to be the same. But we need to take into the account the factor here. In this example, we are passing the value straight from the database, and that is why we can't use that value here. We need to take into account the factor. So we're going to come in here, we're going to say custom functions, and we're going to say returned with factor, and we're going to use the value. So we're going to say value from variable, and we're going to say old value, okay? Factor is going to be from variable. It's going to be local state factor, okay? Now we have the old value adjusted by the factor, okay? What is the new value? The new value is what the user entered, okay? We're going to come in here, new value, from variable. We're going to come to widget state, new value. And old factor is the current factor. From variable, local state, factor. We're going to say confirm. And now we have it. Another nice thing you may want to do is that you want to display the old value here, right? So you can simply come in here. You have your text field here, and you can scroll down and you can have an initial value. So we're going to set the initial value, which is what the user sees before they click on the row. Okay, and this is obviously needs to take into account the factor. Okay, set from variable, we're going to say old value, but not just old value, right? Custom function, returned with factor, value from variable, old value. Okay, because what they're seeing is has the factor taken into account. Okay, factor from variable, local state, factor, confirm. Now, once we update the new local state, there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is we need to refresh the page, okay? So we're going to come in here, we're going to add a new action, we're going to do navigate to home page, okay? Transition type, you can do instant, you can do fade. Let's do instant, close, and now let's run the app, and let's see how it works. All right, so here's the app. We are seeing everything where the dollar is 1. And let's say we are interested in seeing all the currencies when dollar is 10. So we can click on it. We see the original currency. We're going to say 10, submit, and everything is multiplied by 10 automatically. Let's say dollar, we want 100, 100. And now everything is 100. Let's say we change, we want to work with Australian dollars. Let's say we're interested in when Australian dollar is 5. It automatically recalculates because it's automatically recalculating the factor. Let's say I'm interested in zloty, 1 zloty, and this is what we're seeing, okay? We're seeing all the values here. 1 zloty is 22 cents, 28 Canadian cents, 21 euro cents. Let's say we want 20 euros, okay? This is the values we're getting. 20 euros is a little bit more than $20. And when we click on it, we are seeing lots of numbers after the period here. And that is because we need to format this value correctly. That's very, very simple to do. Let's go ahead and do a case where we want to remove a currency. So if we come in here, we have a column, we have a text. Let's duplicate this. And now we're going to have it under. Let's change the font to maybe 14. And let's change it to remove. So we're going to have nothing here. I'm just going to say remove, make it a little bit smaller. Let's say 12. And this is going to be an action that removes it. Okay. So if they click on this, okay, they click on it, all it's going to do is show from true to false. We're going to add an action. We're going to change the backend query. database update document. We're going to say currencies document. We're going to say reference, and we're going to say show to false. Okay, so now it's going to remove it. So let's run the app and see if that's working. All right, so we have remove under it. If we click on it, it removes it. You see that? And if we go back to our database, and you see Polish zloty is false, and we have, what do we have? Euro is true, and we click on euro, that removes it. We go back to the database, it's now false. So it automatically updates it instantaneously. So at this point, this is the app that we have. If we click on it, we can change it to 1. It's automatically gonna recalculate, but there's still a couple of issues. The first is that when we click on it, it's just too long, right? It's too long. And in some instances, it's showing not a properly formatted value. So if I change this to, let's say, 5 or something, you see how it has this long value. So we need to make this shorter, and we need to make sure this value is formatted correctly. So let's do that right now. We're gonna go back to the app, and we are gonna go in here to the action where the component is loaded, and you can set a height on the component. So we can put 300, for instance, something like that. And then when the component pops up, we can make sure that the value is being displayed. This value right here, it's properly formatted. So we can come in here, we can come to number formatting, and there's no formatting. So we're gonna say decimal, we're gonna say decimal type automatic, and this should hopefully properly format. We're gonna say confirm. So now, as you can see, it's gonna be decimal. And if you run the app, it should look a lot better. All right, here's the app. Let's say we want to change USD. You see it's a lot smaller now. So we can put 10, submit it, it automatically recalculates. Let's say we have 14. We want to put, I don't know, 11. Submit it, it recalculates. And now if you click on it, you see it's the 3 places here. It's not like super long. And obviously you can make it to 2 places. You can do however you want to. I put 8, it's going to recalculate here, and it's to 3 places. So it's not that ugly long number to like a million places. And you can also change that, make it to 2 places, to 1 place if you want. It's really, really up to you. And so that is how you create a dynamic currency conversion app. And remember, guys, you can take this further if you want. You can have something like instead of one list, you can have a situation where you have a list view and you can have tabs. So you can wrap this list view in a tab. You can have multiple tabs and you can display different currencies, different cryptos, stuff like that. And right now, here in this app, you can display currencies, but you can also add cryptos, because if you come in here, we also have BTC here, right? We have Bitcoin. And so all you need to do is come in here, add a new document, and this is going to be a code is going to be BTC. Value is going to be whatever it's to the dollar. Is it something like this? And then here you can say show. It's going to be Boolean true. And now you have Bitcoin here. You have BTC as well. So when you run your app, you're going to see BTC, and you can separate, regular currencies with cryptocurrencies. And what you can do is you can essentially add a tab bar, right? You can come in here, you have a column, you can search for tab, and you have a tab bar. And that way you can create, let's say, 2 tabs or 3 tabs, different lists, different currencies. But really the key here is keeping track of that factor. Very, very important. If you go to local state, factor is 1, but that factor is going to change depending on what the user enters and as compared to what the value was before. And as always, you can view and clone this app on my Patreon page. So if you want to launch this app, you want to modify it, you want to customize it, you want to build your own currency app, feel free to work on this app. You can clone it on my Patreon page, which is going to be in the description below. So I really hope you've gotten value here. Let me know, guys, what you think in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more no-code content, I have a lot of interesting content planned where you're going to learn how to build amazing apps without writing a ton of code. And also make sure to check out my Patreon page. I'm going to be doing live streams there, going to be having special content for my supporters. So if you enjoy this content, if you're getting value from it, check out that page and definitely support this channel. I would highly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Really hope you've gotten value here, and I will talk to you in a future video.